Hi, everyone, and welcome to Purple Coach Conversations. I'm Anne, and we're joined by Tanya as well. So, our goal here at Purple Coach Conversations is to normalize, educate, and inspire conversations around diversity and inclusion. We're both coaches, mothers, and entrepreneurs. We are not diversity experts, but what we're trying to aim is to have conversations with people that are willing and have something interesting share and something that's also unique about their journeys and their experiences around diversity and inclusion.
Yes, thank you, Anne. So today we are joined by Hanna Andersen, who is a career and leadership coach. She works on supporting and growing teams in an inclusive way. Her goal is that employees learn to be more themselves at work and accepted for who they are, hence the name of her company, As We Are. She also created a fortnightly journal called The Water Cooler, where she unpacks workplace issues faced by underrepresented groups. She's all about connecting and having conversations to make sure we move forward. The same thing that we are trying to do here. And we are delighted to have her with us today. So hello, Hanna.
Hi.
Very nice to see you.
Hi, and you?
We'd love to hear a bit more about your story. That's how we always start Purple Coach Conversations. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm the founder of As We Are. So that's a coaching and training practice that's all about increasing diversity in leadership, increasing happiness at work. And it really came for me from starting to notice that a lot of the diversity and talent programs within organizations seem to be having a focus on changing the individuals, like women's development programs that were going to teach women how to like negotiate and all of these kind of masculine energy words, as I would call them. And I just kind of thought, I don't think there's anything wrong with women or anybody else who's underrepresented in leadership. I think that there is a problem with the system that only allows for certain types of people to rise to the top of organisations. And I think we're all brilliant as we are, hence why the business is called that. And I guess a couple of things happened around about the same time that really pushed me to take that step, because I'd worked at one organisation since I was 19, so that was for 13 years. And, it was really all I'd ever known. I expected that I would probably work there forever. But a couple of things happened. So I was kind of having those kind of realizations, starting to think more about diversity and inclusion. I was really frustrated that the gender pay gap had got worse. And I went to lots of International Women's Day events and just felt frustrated that we were having the same conversations that we had been having at all of the events that I'd been to the year before. At that same time, I was also doing a coaching qualification. So I'd done lots of coaching in my career already. I'd been a people manager for a long time. I'd been a trainer, but I was doing like external, ICF accredited coaching training. And then I got made redundant. So like all of those things happened within the space of like probably about 6 weeks. And yeah, all of that came together, and I thought I'm going to go and try and do something about this. So I kind of work in two ways. I work one-to-one with people who want support in their careers, and help them to understand the strengths that they have and how they can harness and utilize those, and also try to work with organizations to help them to really think about how they can approach talent and diversity in a bit of a different way. It just allows people to kind of enjoy work more. And then the water cooler, which kind of runs alongside that, as you said, that's you gave a really good introduction to what it is. But essentially it goes out on an email every fortnight and kind of made up of 3 main sections. So it always has a blog post, and that can vary from being about why we should care about the pay gaps to why meritocracy is a lie, or it could, like this week, it's been like 5 steps to writing a CV. So it's like really varied stuff in there, but all around like leadership and careers. And then I have an interview in every issue with somebody who not necessarily works in diversity and inclusion, but who is doing things to make the world better for underrepresented groups. So that might be people who are working in organisations and leading their BAME or their LGBT networks. It might be people who have founded charities, or sometimes it is more like diversity and inclusion professionals as well. And then I finish it off with like links that I found interesting, which sometimes are really random. The one that went out this week it's LGBT History Month, so they were all about that this month. So yeah, that's like a whistle-stop tour of kind of what it is that I do.
I mean, what's unique about you is that you have realized very early on that there was something that could be done around diversity and inclusion, you know, a lot of the guests that haven't had their education or career in diversity and inclusion that we will have, including myself, we've realized things maybe later on in our career, in our lives. And that's something that we wanted to share with our audience, how also, you know, even if you haven't trained in diversity and inclusion, even if you're white woman, you realize that there is something to be done, and it was something you were passionate about very early on.
Yeah.
And how do you select? How do you choose the people that will participate in your interviews at Water Cooler?
So it's changed a bit. So at the beginning, it was people that I knew, because, you know, I didn't really have any proof. I was just like, I kind of got this idea, and a couple of people have signed up, but not very many. So I was really lucky to have met a few great people when I was starting my business. I also had a great mentor. The previous diversity inclusion head of diversity inclusion at HSBC took part. So yeah, I kind of just started by asking people that I knew. And then over time, I'm much more confident in just contacting people, because I can send them a link to my website. They can see all the people that I've interviewed. In terms of choosing like who I want to be in there, it really, to me, it's people who, are doing things above and beyond what they have to do, and who I think have got something interesting to show to other people. And kind of like you said, this is why I try not to have, I don't want every single person in there to be a diversity and inclusion consultant or a head of diversity and inclusion and perpetuate a world where it seems like that's their job to do, because really I don't think that job should have to exist, because it should be running through every thread of businesses. So I would rather interview someone who, you know, works in, I don't know, the communications team, but who has started an initiative within their organisation to, you know, like a mentoring scheme or something like that, or people who perhaps have started networking groups, or like, so there's a brilliant young woman that I interviewed. She went around the streets of Hackney, where she lived, asking young people what were the things that were most concerning them. And the biggest things they said were around violence and gang crime. And so then she got together lots of young people, particularly who were involved in gangs, and got them together at an event to talk about what might help. And off the back of that, she started a social enterprise that's all about mentoring, personal and career development. And yeah, so she, you know, when she started, I think she was still in college maybe when she started that. So just trying to show people, you know, exactly like you said, like, you don't need to be super qualified to go and make some sort of difference in the world, and try to have like a variety of, yeah, you know, people who've gone off and started big things like she has, or people who are doing smaller bits around their day-to-day work as well.
I think that's a really interesting story as well. And, you know, to your point, as you're saying, that it doesn't necessarily need to be a huge groundbreaking idea, but sometimes it's just those little steps that you take that actually then go on to make a huge difference, and that kind of ripple effect, which I think is a great thing to do. And, you know, we talk about it as well with Tanya, the lack of diversity in coaching. And I know you yourself as a coach, it'd be interesting to take your stance, or take your view on what it has been like to view this whole lack of diversity in the coaching world, and also what do you think can be done to better that, and kind of tip those scales from your experience, both your personal experience as a coach, and also just as from a personal perspective, given your interest in diversity, given your experience from the water cooler perspective as well, and the people that you interact with and get to speak and speak with an interview.
So I think that for me, it seems like the main issue is the barrier to access. So, the cost of training to, whichever accredited body that you want to use, the cost of doing training that can be accredited is expensive, and for lots of people out of reach expensive. And then also, the life of a coach comes with instability, because you don't have, unless you're working in-house as a coach, which, that's often one of the first roles to get made redundant. Many more companies now kind of buying consultancy coaching. So it's really like there's an instability in the job. So what that means is that it favours people with a higher socioeconomic status, because you need to have the funds to invest in the first place in order to get the accreditation, which I know that you don't need, but I mean, I think you do. You know what I mean? That it's not as an unregulated industry, isn't it? And then what happens then is, because of the way that our society is set up, there are certain people who are more likely to be in those higher socioeconomic statuses, which means that you get an overrepresentation of certain groups of people doing coaching. So that's not to say that, people, do you know what I mean? Like you are more likely to be living in poverty if you are disabled than if you're not disabled, for example. So it's not to say that everybody who's disabled can't afford to be a coach. That's obviously not true, but it just means that there's going to be an overrepresentation, particularly of white, straight, able-bodied. Maybe I feel like the gender balance actually isn't too bad, but I don't know sometimes if that's because I just like hang out in really, really female communities. So I'm not actually sure what the gender.
Yes, it's very much middle class white female representation of any coaching.
Yeah, and I think, and then that perpetuates itself as well, because when that's the main group that you see doing it, you kind of question, well, is that for me? If I, in the same way that you see an industry full of men and think, I don't know if I want to go and do that job because it's really heavily dominated by men. And then I think you've got all those same barriers for clients as well, because again, it's an expensive, not necessarily luxury is not the right word, but for lots of people it's not an essential monthly outgoing. And you think, so my qualification is in executive coaching. Well, if I did actual like C-suite level executive coaching, we know that is mainly white men. So that means that executive coaching is mainly going to white men because they are mainly executives. So, and that's why I try to price myself and pitch myself more at like a middle management level, because I do want coaching to be more accessible to you earlier within your career. I don't think it was ever something that I would have felt was accessible to me before I started doing it. That was something that people like higher up did. And if it stays like that, then the people getting coached are just going to mirror the types of people that we get in those senior leadership positions.
Yeah, we've interviewed somebody who is she's maybe you can check also the recordings as well, because she will come before you, so she'll be already out there. Irene Pokwen, she's a Black coach, and she's an assistant teacher at an executive coaching school, and she was also saying how the same thing as you, and she was also saying that sometimes it's just the lack of knowing the profession as well, because it's so unrepresented, and it's just that they're not exposed, they're not exposing other groups, and they just don't know. And she was talking about even her family members and people around herself that didn't know about the profession, and it's getting there slowly, as something important and useful to them as well.
And I think it goes like full circle, isn't it? Because you question, why do they not know about it? And to your point, Hannah, is because you don't have a lot of Black people or people of color in certain professions at a high C-level role. So if they're not being exposed to it through their companies, it's unlikely that they'll just randomly come across it. Yeah. If there's nothing in their professional career or personal career that has kind of introduced it to them, if you like. So then you get the circle of just a certain class of people who are being given executive coaching, and even if coming out of the executive coaching side of things as well, just as a coach, no matter what industry you're coaching, again, I think you talked about the social economical aspect of it, and seeing, I think Irene as well touched on this, seeing the value of it. And so, for example, I relate to that because as a relationship coach, everyone has issues in their relationship. There's a lack of diversity of relationship coaches or life coaches, accredited life coaches. And again, I feel is the same reason there as well. We're not being exposed to it as a community, if you like. And so when I speak to my friends about it, they're not training to be coaches or life coaches or any kind of coaches, because they're not a lot of them are exposed to it, and then begs the question why. And I guess as well, there's a bit of a mindset, but there's also social economical differences as well. And I feel like it's quite an intertwined reason and a bit of a circle, if you like, of why the lack of diversity is there. I'm wondering from your perspective as well, what do you think can be done to tip those scales? Just in general, if you think about coaching in general, so not necessarily at the C level where we know that, we need to get more people sitting on the boards, sitting on, C-level C-suite level roles, but looking at coaching as a discipline across the board. What do you think would help raise awareness for people to get into coaching more? So personal development coaching, improve your business as an entrepreneur, improve your relationship, improve, whatever aspect, improve yourself, Yeah. What do you think could help?
I would really like to see, as you said, like people getting exposed to it earlier in their lives, so it not being, like coaching coming more out into the open. So I think, relationship coaching might be something that people don't always feel comfortable to perhaps talk to their friends and family about. So people might be getting relationship coaching but aren't maybe telling people about it, or people may get career coaching but kind of think, oh, if I tell people, they'll think that I'm not very good at my job or whatever it is. So I think kind of trying to be more transparent about it, or open maybe rather than transparent, but then also is trying to see how that could come earlier in your life as well. So I mentioned God's Promise earlier, who started this social enterprise. So I do some work with her now. I do like CV feedback for the young people that go through those programs, but kind of think, how could I help them to be more exposed to the work I do as a coach, and so perhaps doing some like volunteering in that sort of way, so that younger people can access coaching and kind of see the power of it, perhaps, rather than, I think young people are often given mentoring, but that is very much, somebody older and wiser is going to come and kind of tell you what to do. It is very different to coaching, isn't it? I wonder if there's kind of ways to look at, getting, and I'm sure lots of coaches want to give back, don't they? And kind of thinking perhaps if there's ways to volunteer to do more coaching with young people, and then also perhaps some sort of way for the companies to, I don't know, subsidise qualifications perhaps for people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, because we're talking thousands of pounds for these qualifications, and if we as an industry believe that we do want people to be accredited, then we should be thinking about how we kind of make that more accessible.
And I think you touched, touched on something really interesting there about, it sounds like coaching in itself has, there's a bit of a stigma around it when you're not doing executive level coaching, because I think there's no stigma around that. It's like, yes, I'm receiving executive coaching. There's, it's almost like a badge of honor, I think, sometimes. Like, yeah, I can afford it and I'm good at what I do and I want to be better. But when you talk about coaching in other aspects, it's almost like stigma that was previously there with therapy, where if you're attending therapy or psychotherapy, there's something quote unquote wrong with you and there was a stigma attached to it. And it sounds like what needs to be done as well around the coaching industry is having those conversations, just as you said, and I think it's a really good point that you make there. Stigmatize it as something undesirable by starting these conversations early and making people realize this is actually, a fantastic thing to have and a privilege to have. If you're able to get it sooner rather than later, or whenever you get it, but it's a great thing as opposed to being attached to the negative stigma.
Yeah, and I think we all forget because, or I don't know about you, as soon as I got into like coaching, I am surrounded by coaches, like all over, social media and networking and all of these kind of things. But for most of my friends, I'm probably the only coach that they know or interact with. And I think you can forget that sometimes because you're in this coaching bubble, that it's not actually something that everybody else like experiences on a daily basis.
That's such a good point. And it's what Anne was saying about the therapy and the coaching. And obviously all of these can happen in one session. You can be a coach, a therapist, and a mentor, depending on the client's journey. And that's what's wonderful in the job that we are doing, that we've been trained for that, to be able to help our clients, face the past, but also face the future, understanding where they are and where they want to go. And vis-a-vis of the client, and you've raised some very, very valuable points. And I'm also, from the previous conversations we've had with Anne and with other guests, etc., what we've realized though is, and I spoke with my supervisor about that, and he said sometimes we have a guest speaker at our conference, and she specializes in writing journals. She's a Black coach, executive coach, and she specializes in teaching people how to write their journal. And the room is full, and it's Black coaches. So Black coaches are out there. It's not. The issue is that I think there's a missing link here, and I think the missing link is a little bit understanding that maybe we, as in the coaching school already, we should be asking ourselves the question: if there is no teachers of different background or color, etc., this is already a mistake. That we should sort that out, make sure that it's not just a guest speaker coming from time to time, but somebody who is there to kind of bring a different perspective. As we've said before in our other interviews that we've had with Anne alone, like, coaches are here to bring change. How can you bring change if you're not in tune with this, right? And that takes me to the next question, because I know that you are in tune with it, and you've been in tune with it even before I have myself. And I wanted to ask you, when did you have this big aha moment that being inclusive meant being anti-racist? Because anti-racism is what we've been talking about so much, and that's a big distinction of being proactive and fighting and being more inclusive and reading from diverse authors and talking to different coaches from different backgrounds, etc., and understanding and being better coaches. So when did you have that aha moment?
Yeah, so I think that so all my life I've thought that I'm a very good person, obviously, and I don't wouldn't say I was as far as I don't see colour, like not in a complete, sometimes people will completely pretend like, oh, I didn't even notice. I wasn't like that, but more like, we're all one human race, like let's all just love each other. And I wonder, actually, as you were talking then, I was thinking, I wonder if that is part of an issue in the coaching industry as well, that it probably does tend to attract people who are quite, not hippie, but do you know what I mean? So I think that there is maybe a bit of that in there. So that's kind of how I had lived for most of my life. And then actually the team that I managed, the last team I managed at HSBC, was super diverse. And I think because we were the community and charity team, we just sort of attracted this really great diverse bunch of people. So we had the chair of the LGBT network, I had the chair of the Working Parents Network, I had somebody who was on the committee of the BAME network, had somebody who was part of the disability network. It was just a really diverse team. And I think that's kind of when I started to get a bit more interested in diversity and inclusion, and therefore I decided to read Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Reni Eddo-Lodge. So that's kind of what had got me to reading the book. But then there's a part in the book, I was on holiday in Canary Islands on a balcony reading it on my Kindle, I remember it very well, and there's a bit in there where she says there's this sort of almost I can't think what the word is, but this sort of strange truth that for lots of Black people would rather spend time with actual white supremacists than white people who say that they don't see race, because at least you know where you stand with someone who's actively understands how they feel about something. And I just honestly I just put it down and was overwhelmed with just shock and realization of that is me, and that I have preferred to think of myself as a good person than ever kind of think of anything in any more detail. And just the absolute arrogance of it, to be honest, to say that colour doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't matter to me, because I live in a world that thinks that that sort of raises white people over others. So I think that was in probably, it was maybe 2 and a bit years ago. So that was the big the kind of first the big sort of almost crack in there's no going back now. But I won't pretend that I overnight was I still wouldn't say that. I don't think anyone's ever can truly say they are 100% now I'm an anti-racist. It's something that you work towards all of the time. And I shared with you, I tried to start doing the Me and White Supremacy Challenge by Layla Saad, and I didn't even make it through the first day, the first time. It was so confronting, I just couldn't do it. And now actually since June of 2020, when clearly I think a lot of other people had that earth-shattering moment that you can't go back from, and since then I have been taking part in a learning circle with a small group of women who we're all committed to becoming anti-racist and working really hard on that. And we now have worked through all of, actually, Me and White Supremacy is right here. I promise it's not there as a prop, but it is there. And we're just about to, we have finished it, and now we're going to do the first section again, kind of going back and going, okay, now we've done it all, can we go deeper into things a second time? So yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I read that one line in a book 2.5 years ago and was a different person. Well, I probably was a different person, but I still had, I think if people just think that by realizing it that's enough, that's not true. There's lots more.
And so since June you've been meeting, what is it, once a month or
fortnightly?
Oh, fortnightly. And you talk about a specific book, or it can be an article, or
Yeah, so we started off, so the first couple, to be honest, were a bit just like, if you remember what June was like. And then we started on Me and White Supremacy, which really is a 28-day challenge. But what we did was we would do 1 week per fortnight, if that makes sense. So over a few months, we completed the book, and we kind of go around and share some of the things that have come up for us. We also paid this brilliant anti-racist educator to come and do a session with us. That was fantastic. And now we're just kind of shifting now into like, what's our long-term kind of rhythm going to be. And so we've all just done our commitment statements and some of our actions. And now we will, each time we'll either like watch a documentary, a film, a podcast or a book chapter or something like that. We'll talk about what came up. And we also, we're going to start doing some like donations every time, like, because we're like, well, I'm sure we'd all have a coffee if we could meet in person. And we're also now going to have an action each time. So somebody's going to bring something like, oh, we're all going to write to our MP about this particular issue, or we're all going to write to the CEO of this company about this particular issue. And so it's more about having accountability, and but also maybe people to speak to when you're like, oh my God, I've got to have a really difficult conversation with a member of my family and I just don't know how to go about it. You know, that a real range of things, but we've become really close because, you know, you share some pretty ugly things about yourself as you go through that sort of work. So
I think, Hannah, you said something there. I'm just going to take you a little bit back, where you mentioned about, you know, you are not this kind of people who go, oh, I don't see race and color, I don't see color rather. And I know I can understand the context in what you mean. It's like, yes, you do see color, but you don't see it in the sense of to discriminate or that we are different. But then you mentioned something as well that kind of stood out for me, and I just wanted to bring it back again, where you mentioned that of course you didn't see color, you know, it wasn't that prominent or that big deal because you lived in a white world.
Yeah.
And you lived as a white woman in a world that accommodated for your existence and for you to thrive, and more so if you're a white male as well. And I have brought this up before with someone quite close to me. He's white and he's male, and I talked about this, the whole aspect of living in a world where it's not the people that will thrive the most, it's not just white people but white males. And they struggled to understand this concept. They really struggled to understand it. And as you bring this up, it just took me back to that conversation, because then I realized this is why he struggled to understand it, because he's never known anything else. And now I'm suddenly challenging everything is ever, you know, the basis of his existence, and not because he was actively discriminating against anyone. You know, on the contrary, he's one of the loveliest people you'll ever meet. But it's just that challenge of, oh my goodness, have I been so, and back to the white privilege, have I been so privileged to live in a world that I've not even noticed shit, sorry, because of the way I look.
yeah.
And I just found it interesting that you had that realization as well, like, and went, of course, I've not recognized it.
And there's a good analogy, isn't there? Something like, it's like you don't notice the doors that are open for you, you only notice the ones that are closed. So if in your life all the doors have been open, you might not even have noticed that you were passing through doorways. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just passing this long corridor of life and you didn't even realize there were any doors. You were just sauntering along through, but didn't realize that those doors were closed in some other people's spaces, but you didn't even know the doors were there because you never had to worry about them.
It's powerful. You didn't even know the doors were there.
Yeah.
It brings me on to one of our next questions, and as part of the water cooler that you do, one of your questions is that you ask your guest, specifically I think more the women, what it means to have it all. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a question that me and Tanya were quite interested in, and we've discussed previously as well with other guests. I'm just curious from your perspective, if as you've gone through these interviews with your guest, whether you've seen a particular pattern, and perhaps specifically more so between white and non-white women, of what it means for them to have it all.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So if I give you a bit of background, the reason that I asked that question is because I hate, like, I think it's a lie, right, that has been sold to women to trick them into doing everything. So when the workplace opened up to women, you can have it all. You can have it all. You can have the children, you can run your household, and you can have a job. Isn't that great? You can have it all. Instead of saying, now that you're going to go to work, men, you're just going to take half of all of these jobs. No one's telling men to go and have it all, because that would mean having to increase the amount of work that they did that's unpaid. So that's where it came from for me, because I was like, this is a lie, and everybody needs to know that it's a lie. So that's my point of view on it. But what I say is, so the most common answer that I get is that people say, it is possible to have it all if you define for yourself what it means to have it all, which I do agree with. But also, I would say, but we don't get to decide for ourselves what have it all means. Society tells us. But you know, most people will say you can have it all but not at the same time, or you need to decide what's important to you. That's kind of the variation on it.
I think this question is why coaching exists.
Exactly.
So much mum's guilt. Oh my gosh, I'm not spending enough time with the kids. I'm spending too much time with the kids. I'm spending less time, etc. So that's thanks to that we exist.
Yes.
What I would say I've noticed is that there are more women of colour call out that problematic nature of the phrase, and kind of the, you know, there is, because even the women that are held up to us as having it all, oh my God, she's got a family and she's got this great job and she's got a cleaner and she's got a nanny and she's paying all these other people to do all this work. We don't get told that other bit. So there is inherent privilege again in getting to be somebody that has the traditional version of it all. So whilst I'd say there's not like a specific difference, you know, most people give a fairly similar answer to the question, but I'd say that more women of colour are like calling out that problematic nature of the question even existing as a question. That makes sense.
That's interesting. It's interesting you say that as well, where you go like, yes, having it all, but then let's look at all the other support that you do have for you to have it all. And then it then goes back to, well, then do you technically really have it all? Because you're not running all your household stuff. As you're saying, society told you, you need to cook and clean and be a great mom and be a great wife and be a great this and great that and great that and great this. And then you can have it all. Then really to have it all, there's some humans, as a human being, you just technically it's a lie. And I like I like the way you phrased it. It was a lie that was sold to us so that we could do more, and while the men get away with doing less still in the house.
I think that's great. You put it in perspective and you include also, I guess it would be interesting to ask men this question. I will ask my husband this evening the question, because he's very involved also, even though he's working hard, but he's also very involved during the weekends, etc. And yeah, I'd love to hear his opinion. So I'll ask him as well what it means having it all for women. I'd like to hear his position on that.
Yes. Oh, by the way, just a little caveat. I'm not saying that men do nothing at home. That is not what I mean at all. We know that there are a lot of amazing men out there as well who put in their share of the work. But it's just
women do 60% more unpaid work than men. So whilst we know it's not all men,
yeah,
but there's a lot of them. So.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, so thanks for that. And we like to finish the interview with some fire questions where the audience gets to know you a bit better. And as you've got a lot of beautiful, colorful books behind you, the first question is going to be, oh wow,
they're all in color order.
Barack Obama, or
Oh yeah, I haven't started that yet. Have you seen the size of it?
Massive, yes.
Huge.
He's real life face size or something.
Yeah, I haven't started that one yet.
So the first question is, do you have a favorite book?
It is really hard. I actually host a book club as well. We haven't talked about that.
Oh,
But I host a book club as well. I would say, so probably one of the books that I've found really influential in some of the work that I do is The Guilty Feminist, by Deborah Frances White. So she talks in there a lot about confidence, but also about kind of being like an imperfect feminist. But then I'd say this year I read Girl, Woman, Other, and I just thought it was one of the most diverse, inclusive, most beautiful books that I've ever read, and I would recommend everybody.
Thank you. We'll make sure we'll write it on the notes. So that's what we do with our other guests. We put the reference so that they can click on it and look at it if they're interested as well. And do you have a favorite quote?
Well, if you'll let me, a little passage from The Guilty Feminist that I read quite a lot. So it's a little longer than a quote, but is it okay if I read it?
Sure. We won't ask you what your favorite food is then.
So it's, we can hope, but can we dare? Sometimes I think, no, not me. It's too hard. I'll be criticised. I'll get it wrong. I don't have time. Where would I begin? Then I remember that my life now is the direct consequence of the hopes of the long dead women before me. We live their hopes every time we walk down the street unchaperoned, uncorseted and uncensored. We live the hopes of our great-grandmothers every time we decide if, when and how to have a child, and each time we don't die in childbirth because they hoped for the medical advances which are our normal. We are the breathing, living manifestations of the hopes of women who are not breathing anymore. We must hope for ourselves, our daughters, and the women 100 years from now. Got a bit.
We could end the show just like that now. That is so powerful.
And I think that just kind of tries to remind me, sometimes it's so overwhelming, all of this, you know, when you are trying to like make social change, like it doesn't feel like anything's changing, but it is. You know, you just think about, you know, even 2 generations ago, the lives that our grandmothers had compared to what we have now. You can have massive change in a generation, even though it doesn't feel like it, and that the things we're trying to do like are not in vain. And like Layla Saad talks about being a good ancestor, and that kind of being, you know, rather than, you know, looking for that instant gratification today of, you know, how do I know that I'm kind of doing something for the next generation so that they can look back and, you know, won't be able to believe that, you know, the events of 2020, I mean, around George Floyd, not about coronavirus, that, you know, they won't even be able to believe that that happened. Like, that's what I hope for, even though you want that to happen now, but it's not going to happen now. But we can be part of it, can't we?
Yeah, I think, Hannah, that is such a beautiful passage that end the show on, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think if you're happy to, if you could just share it with us as well, would love to post it along with this recording. I think a lot of women can take inspiration from it, definitely. Before we let you go, do you want to share with us where people can find you, how they can connect with you?
Yeah, of course. So my website is asweare.org.uk. And then like all of the links are on there. You can like email me, LinkedIn, all of that jazz. Then the main place really that I hang out is Instagram, and that is asweare.uk.
Okay, brilliant. And we'll put all those links and information as well down on this video as well, so people will be able to click on it and follow you. And we just want to thank you both so much for being on the show, and thank you once again to our listeners. Don't forget to like and share the videos as well with anyone that you think will find value from them. As we said, our message is to keep having these conversations and sharing conversations with others as well, and subscribe to our newsletters. And thank you once again. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.